Hi everyone, this is Matt Seifert with the Real Estate Finance Initiative, here to talk to you today about the concept of a cash return as part of our ongoing return series. What we plan to talk about today is just an overview of what a cash return actually is, how it's calculated, and how it's used, and what the output really means. The cash return is essentially the metric that contemplates the impact of capital expenditures, tenant improvement costs, and leasing commission costs on the income return. So the income return is a metric, and it is a metric used in the valuation process, but part of our return series here is to talk about a multitude of different returns and how they're used and how they're calculated so that you can make an informed decision in terms of real estate valuation. So you'll see that the cash return looks very similar to the income return, with the exception of the NOI is reduced by the capital expenditures, which a capital expenditure would be an example of something like the replacement of a roof, plus the addition of any tenant improvement and any leasing commission costs. So a tenant improvement cost is the cost that is incurred by the landlord when they put a new tenant into a space. It's the cost that the landlord provides to the tenant in the form of what they call fit out. That is the money they give to allow the tenant to create the environment that they want within their office or their store or whatever it might be. And the leasing commission cost is the cost of the broker and the expertise of the broker, the leasing broker in this case, who assists both the tenant and the landlord in getting the lease signed. So it's the NOI minus the CapEx and the TIs and leasing commissions over whatever the valuation is of the asset. The cash return is often referred to as the cash-on-cash return, although that's more of a levered concept, or really the cash in the jeans. This is the money that you get as the owner of the property on a monthly basis or an annual basis after everything has been paid. And really what the cash return's role is to demonstrate the impact of capital on cash flow. So you could have buildings that represent great income returns. So they have very strong income returns, meaning NOI over value, but very poor, they would have very poor cash returns. And the reason is it could be an older building. So for instance, older buildings require lots of maintenance, meaning new roofs, new elevators, new exterior painting, new repairs to the parking garages, whatever it might be. There is a lot of capital expenditures associated with owning older buildings. Or you could have a situation where you have a building that's not entirely leased, so you'll have a lot of the tenant improvement and leasing costs associated with bringing the building to a stabilized level. So let's revisit our example. Again, we are contemplating the acquisition of a retail property in Ballston, Virginia, called Hoya Point. This is a stabilized property with a single tenant that is considered credit quality. It is a triple net reimbursement structure in terms of their operating expense reimbursement, and they're there on the long-term lease. So you have underwritten the deal to the best of your abilities, meaning you've verified and adjusted the revenue, the operating expenses, and the capital expenditures, and you've developed the year one cash flow, which we'll see on the next slide. So in effect, with the cash return, what we're asking for is, what is the dividend payment? So, what is the cash in the jeans? What is the money I'm going to get every month or every year after we pay everything that we're required to pay to own and operate the property? So again, back to our cash flow that we've developed here. Again, we are focusing on this year one, and with the income return, we were focusing solely on that NOI number of $612,314. But for a cash return, we're focusing on the cash flow before taxes, which in this case is $606,893. And it would demonstrate here that we have a capital expenditure in the form of a capital reserve in year one of $5,421. So again, the year one NOI is $612,314. The year one capital is $5,421. And we previously determined that the valuation via our income return calculation is going to be $12.25 million. So in this case, running through the formula, our cash return is 4.95%, which simply means that our income return has been degraded by 5 basis points due to the presence of that $5,421, which is the capital reserve associated with the year one. So this is frankly to be expected from this profile of a deal. So for instance, stabilized properties on long-term leases with a single tenant, you're not going to have TIs and leasing commissions. You may or may not have a lot of capital expenditures, and so the cash returns and the income returns usually can be more or less the same, or there might be minor variation. However, the alternative would be if you would have a 60% occupied office building. So there would be a lot of lease up, as we sort of discussed in a prior example. So you would have a lot of the tenant improvements and leasing commissions. If you are choosing to redevelop it, if you're choosing to redevelop an older retail property, there's going to be a lot of cost associated with maybe a repositioning of some of the space, or a revitalization of some of the space, both interior and exterior. That would be in the form of the capital expenditure, which would reduce the value, which would reduce your NOI and thus your income return. So in those instances, the cash returns can be low or even negative. So with that, we'll conclude the summary of the cash return, and I would encourage you to reach out to the extent you have any further questions, but we appreciate your time.